All right. Good morning. Hello, Ass. How are you? Are you? We can't hear you. You must be muted. Oh, there she is.
There we go. I'm unmuted. As I was saying, I think I've forgotten how to do this.
Are you in a lonely office before everyone else early in the morning?
Yep, I am.
Wow. Talk about dedication.
Yeah, I'm just hoping that the boss sees my clock in time. And
they'll be super impressed and give you a raise. Yeah.
Absolutely. You're in Cape Town?
Yeah, I'm in Cape Town. I'm actually staying at this amazing, beautiful house that I've got to know these people. Yeah, they're really just the most awesome people. We had a little bit of a bosberaad this weekend, so lots of things being done. And coming back to Joburg a little later today. So I thought, don't want to miss the show. Let's get on with it. We've got so much to talk about. Oh my God, this weekend, did you watch the season finale of America?
Is it just called America?
No, I'm
Clearly
saying
I haven't been watching.
America, the country's season finale with the assassination attempt, and
Yes.
I woke up yesterday morning at like 7:00, and I saw my phone was going crazy, and there were like thousands of messages coming through, and I thought, oh, what is this? I'm not sure whether, because you don't know what to believe anymore, and honestly, you can't trust any of the normal sources. So it used to be easy. If it was in the news, you'd be like, okay, cool, this is news, you can believe it. I'll tell you something. This is absolutely the wildest thing. And anybody who tells me that this is not the biggest news story of the last 10 years is just like fast asleep. Because the fact that in the United States of America, in the most hotly contested election in generations, the candidate for the Republican Party was almost killed by a crazy gunman who, no doubt, I don't believe any of this nonsense that people are going on about, like, this is just one crazy person. Of course it's one crazy person, but in the environment of Trump is Hitler, anything to stop Trump, this is naturally what was going to happen. And I'm absolutely incensed at the way that the left-wing media have been positioning this as, it's Donald Trump fell at a rally, or Donald Trump spirited away from the stage by Secret Service, but no mention of the fact that this was an assassination. Some of the news media didn't even want to use the word assassination attempt. And, in the scheme of things...
what else is it?
Well, I mean, this is the point, right? But they're so hell-bent on their narrative. I was thinking about this while I was trying to get to sleep last night, because when news stories like this happen, I can't sleep. It bugs me in a way that I suppose it's irrational. Most people would say it's not directly related to you, so why worry about it? But I think about how the idea of an assassination it's like the last time this happened was Ronald Reagan when I was a kid, And I mean, there've obviously been smaller events along the way, but this is, for the President of the United States of America, this is a massive, massive story. And to see how the Secret Service bungled things, and honestly, it's the most miraculous thing that this guy survived. Because if he hadn't turned his head, it would have taken him out. Finished. That would have been the end of Donald Trump, and it would have been like just the most incredible pretext for America to go up in flames. And I've got to say one other thing, because if this happened to a Democrat, the streets would be ablaze, the place would be falling down, people would be looting and destroying shops, there'd be fires all over the place. It would have been like when George Floyd was killed, and worse, because you know what America's like. But, this never happens on the right. They're always calm. And the way that photograph, my God, that photograph of him kind of raising his fist in defiance with blood all over his face. And I don't care who you are or how much you hate or like Trump. That is the photograph of the decade, without a doubt.
Absolutely.
I mean, that's that. And what an absolute boon. I mean, obviously, your immediate reaction is like, he survived, thank God. And even his worst enemies in politics are like, thank God he survived. But this is just the most incredible thing that there's just no chance the Democrats can pick up any amount of support after this that will power them to an election victory. I mean, this is like, even though nobody wanted it, least of all Donald Trump would have. I mean, 78-year-old man, you don't want to have a bullet go past your ear, but this is going to be all that's required for him to win the election. I don't see anything happening between now and November that could trump, if you'll pardon the pun, this. So I've got a lot of conflicted feelings about it. And by the way, anybody who really does hate him, and anybody who thinks they've got the moral high ground and have had, because Donald Trump's a terrible person and mean tweets and all of that stuff, I mean, really, you're on your own now. It's just, you can't claim the moral high ground when your side, even if it's one lunatic, when your side is on the side of assassination. It's like there's a direct line to you being the bad guy. If you think,
I was just going to say, what is the psychology behind anyone who was not going to vote for him, or anybody who wasn't going to put him back in a position where you could vote for him? What's the difference between pre assassination attempt and after? Psychologically, what changes in a person's mind?
Well, I mean, there's so many people who have admitted now, and these are smart people, not idiots, like, high-profile business people. I saw Bill Ackman, for example, who's a really big donor. He has been a donor to the Democrats for years, and I mean, he's a super smart guy. He's been very involved in kind of sorting out these pro-Palestinian protests at university campuses, and he's been very outspoken about how he thinks that these people are anti-American and so much more. He was saying yesterday on X, he's like, I fully endorse Trump now. There's just once this kind of thing happens, I think it's, for many people, it's like proof positive that, and obviously these things are beyond the control of anybody, right? I mean, strange events have happened historically. This, though, is absolute fodder for a presidential campaign. I just don't see how this won't redound in his honor. And the fact that he was playing golf yesterday is just remarkable. He was playing a round of golf after he's just basically been shot and survived an assassination attempt. His top part of his right ear was shot. And I mean, there was a guy who was killed, right? Let's just not forget that. But even if you don't care about Trump, like, there was a person killed at his rally. Even if that alone had happened, let's say they got nowhere near Trump, that would have been the biggest story ever in any case. Imagine lunatic gunman kills person at a Trump rally. That would be enough to keep the media busy for 3 weeks. Now you have an actual assassination attempt on a presidential candidate. This is the biggest story that you're going to have this year, without a doubt.
And there's no chance, right, that this, some people are saying it was staged. There's no chance of that, right?
I mean, look, there's always a chance of anything, and I'm super suspicious of pretty much everything I hear these days in the media. But for that to have been staged, I think you have to, I mean, how? Would you have such an incredible sharpshooter that he would only hit the ear? I mean, the chances doesn't matter how close you are, point blank range, you couldn't necessarily just do the damage that was done. And if he hadn't turned his head, or if he had turned his head, can you imagine? I mean, it's like a ball hair of
It's a hair.
chance.
It's a hair, yeah.
So
Sure.
I don't know. I mean, to actually believe that this could have been staged, you would have to, there's this idea of Occam's razor, right? The simplest explanation is usually the best explanation. And I think that that's probably true here. The simplest explanation is that this was an assassination attempt, and that the Democrats have been fomenting this, and the left-wing media for the longest time, saying, he's Hitler, we've got to stop him. They've used the word eliminate. Biden used the word eliminate. Now they've got to own that, because even if this was a lunatic, what persuaded him to behave like this? What persuaded him, besides being a loser and some kind of mentally unstable person? When those people are motivated to do something, you have to look at what the motivation was. Do you remember when there was a congressional baseball match and a Bernie Sanders supporter went and shot a prominent US congressman? The people there were like, well, this happens. And I'm willing to believe that lone gunmen are dangerous and do terrible things. But that's not what other people were saying when, for example, January 6th happened. They're like, well, Trump fomented this. He wanted a revolution. This was an insurrection. So if you're going to claim that, then you also get blamed when your side does something stupid, or one person from your side does something stupid. I think it's absolutely the most astonishing story, and I couldn't believe what I was reading yesterday. And I've watched the videos, and I mean, it's there in plain sight. That one picture where you can see the bullet like whizzing past. It's just insane.
It's crazy. Wow.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So we spent 18 minutes talking about this at the start of the show. So I don't know how much more we need to get into it, but clearly, over the next few days, there'll be much more.
Over the next few days, so much is going to come out. There are going to be so many reactions. The way you said it's been handled quite quietly by his supporters. I don't know. Let's see.
There's no violence, Leanne. You can't dispute that. There would have been a report in the news immediately if someone somewhere decided to take to the streets and burn shit, like they did with the George Floyd riots. Then you could say, well, look. But they haven't. Trump supporters have been well behaved, and they're the ones who everyone's telling me all the time are the violent ones, the dangerous ones, the ones with the guns, the insurrectionists. Well, where's your evidence now? Because if I was a fanatical Donald Trump supporter and you tried to kill him, and I took to the streets, which is the only reason that somebody might on that side, then you'd have every reason to say, look, they're the violent ones. But that's not what's happened. Anyway.
Right.
Anyway, wonder what Alec Baldwin is thinking this morning. He seems to hate Trump, says Jean Andrews. You know what? He got off on a technicality in his case. So there were some very funny memes. I mean, listen, the funny stuff has happened almost straight away. Like too soon, there's a Van Gogh picture of Van Gogh when his ear was sliced off, when he sliced off his own ear. Yeah. And the Trump face on the Van Gogh painting. There's been this meme that I saw yesterday of Alec Baldwin was just kind of exonerated on his charges. Trump shot same day. I wonder if they linked, By the way, I mean, who really thought that Alec Baldwin was going to go to jail? Anybody? I didn't.
No.
I knew that there'd be, it's rules for thee, but not for me in America. If you're rich and powerful, you don't have to worry about the rules as much. So I don't know.
Yeah.
So many comments here that I want to get to. Lots of people talking about obviously all of this. The absolute best timeline cleanser of all was seeing Princess Kate at Wimbledon yesterday. Talk about a silver lining. She was it, says Tracy. I mean, that woman is just, she's spectacular. And by the way, all that conspiracy shit about her, being spirited away, being disappeared, and crazy things that there she was for all to see, and she looked absolutely amazing. I mean, I watched a little bit of it, and I told you on Friday, Wimbledon is one of the things that I do like to watch. It's like a winter tradition.
Yeah.
Even though I wasn't at home, it's a nice thing to sit in front of the TV, and you're all kind of warm, and you've got some snacks and things. And I mean, what a great weekend for anybody who watches sport. But for her to have arrived looking as great as she does, and she really does look spectacular. It's like a big FU to all the people who've had things to say about her as well.
Yeah, my interest in the royal family is peaking at the moment, purely because I'm very far behind. Never watched The Crown, which I just started now. Yeah, okay. So kind of affects you, and your ears prick up every time you see something about the royal family now.
Yeah, that's what's happened to a lot of people. I mean, most people who don't give a damn about the royal family, if they watch The Crown, then they're suddenly excited to know what's going on there. So I understand. How far are you into it?
The first season.
Oh wow! Okay.
So
you got a
long way to go, but I'm enjoying it. And while watching it, I was wondering what your take on it was in terms of historical accuracy.
Who knows, right? I mean, a lot of the stuff that happens in private, nobody will ever know. So the writers have taken a lot of liberties. And I don't watch things like that as historical documentaries. I watch them as entertainment. And I honestly can't remember seeing it because I watched it so long ago. And I've got to say, I wasn't the biggest fan of The Crown. I liked it, but I didn't think it was the most amazing show ever. It's good, though. It's good. Lynn says, Leanne, you are looking so pretty in the comments. Isn't that nice?
Thank you, Lynn. Thank you,
Leanne's
Lynn.
in an office.
Yeah. No, somebody asked what this was behind me. So I'll take you in a little closer. This is my colleague's desk, and it's quite a little collection. You've got Star Wars going on there.
Wow. Okay.
And there's a name for this.
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
Looks
I'm
like
not sure what it is.
Some kind of alien or something.
Yeah. So that's my office. But I did want to say, quite a warming experience I had 2 weekends ago, because we haven't spoken in ages. Was visiting my dad in hospital.
Oh yeah, how's he?
He's still in cardiothoracic ICU. He's still ventilated, but the operation was a major success.
Okay.
For now, they're just battling to extubate him for various reasons, either low SpO2 or low blood pressure. But interestingly, the biggest delay is that he's very anxious and uptight at the moment. And that's apparently something that can happen with these sort of life-changing operations. And because of that and his mental state at the moment, they're unable to extubate. We've been very much trying to keep him calm, keep him rational. There's also an ICU psychosis that sits in as well. So things are tough at the moment. But what was really uplifting was as we went for a family visit last weekend. So that would be my mom in her wheelchair and her carer, my brother and I. And there was someone walking behind us from the park into the hospital. And she obviously overheard us chatting. And then I noticed she was looking at me. So I looked at her and she said, "Are you Leigh-Ann Mole from the Gareth Cliff show?" I said, "Yes." Well, her eyes just started tearing up. She said, "I know your whole situation with what you've been through with your mom, what you're going through with your dad. How is he, by the way?" She said, "You know that your stories and the way you've handled your difficulties got me through the hardest journey of my life." And I said to her, "What was that?" And she said, "Breast cancer." She said, it was watching your podcast with Gareth that got my mom and I through it. And that was just so amazing.
Yeah,
And I say, well,
that
that's the whole point,
makes me happy.
just to let people know that you're not alone in your struggles. Everyone is struggling with something, you know, and you've got to have a certain attitude in order to get through it. The only way.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's beautiful. Often we go on the show and we like try to put our best foot forward and be positive and optimistic, and the reality is that so many people are going through so many things all the time, and you kind of, if this show is one of the things that you do every week with us, then if we can help you in some way, we can make you feel a bit better and not so alone if you're going through something difficult. Then, I mean, if that's all we do,
Yeah.
I'm happy with that,
Yeah, that's it. Happy with that.
Okay.
Carl there says latest.
Yeah.
Yeah, go on.
No. Carl says latest Discovery Health report just came out, and Leanne and her family account for 20% of all claims.
Listen, there are some, we tend to use the same psychologist, psychiatrist, sometimes the same surgeon, and I'm sure that we've paid for many of their holidays abroad.
Oh, listen,
your
family have these people on a retainer, don't they?
Oh, exactly. But yeah, I mean, that little machine that's been put inside him is 2.5 million on its own, without the surgery and surgery costs and hospital fees.
And the other thing that I think is worth remarking on is that the longer you stay in hospital, kind of the worse things could possibly turn out, because hospitals are not a good place to find yourself, right? So if you can get out of there, if you can get him out of there as quickly as possible, that's obviously to be preferred as you go forward.
He's able to write, etc. And I've written on his clipboard: number 1, calm; number 2, extubate; number 3, home. Just focus on those things.
Well, talking about psychologists and psychiatrists, we're going to talk to Professor Szabo, who we've had on the show before, and anybody who's listened to the show knows him. And he's going to be joining us a little bit later. He's currently honorary professor in the department and an emeritus professor in the Faculty of Health Sciences. He was formerly editor-in-chief of the African Journal of Psychiatry, and he was the host of our podcast series Beyond Madness as well. And we'll talk to him about the general state of kind of mental health care in South Africa, because it is something that I think about often. And with Life Estemeni in the news, I've been thinking about that quite a lot. But listen, a few celebrity deaths that we have to comment on. So Trump may have survived, but Shannon Doherty, remember her?
Yes, from Beverly Hills 90210. That's
right. And from the series Charmed, she died at age 53. Not that old, of cancer. Yeah, she's the star of those shows you just mentioned, and I remember her from when I was at school. Like Beverly Hills 90210 was like the show, and I mean, I think there are a lot of guys who remember Shannon Doherty. She's quite hot.
Yes, so, the hotness factor.
Right, and speaking of hotness, I mean, Dr. Ruth also. Dr. Ruth Westheimer.
Yes.
She died. She died over the weekend. Yeah, 96 years old. So she had a really good innings of teaching people how to finger themselves and masturbate furiously, all of that stuff, Dr. Ruth doing her bit. The legendary sex therapist and television host. And she was called a cultural icon by most of the publications that reported her death. And I can think of no better way to describe her, because she really was one of the few people back in the day who used to talk about sex very honestly and openly. She taught other people to have a very practical approach to sex, and who knows, that's probably the most amazing contribution that anyone could make. I mean, if you get people to talk about sex, good for you.
I wonder how much banging she's going to be doing in heaven. Probably lots.
Oh, so much. So much. I mean, I don't know how many husbands she went through during the course of her 96 years, but I'm sure in heaven they're waiting for her with a huge big sofa and a massive welcoming party and all this stuff. So Dr. Ruth. And Common Sense says, Gareth, what's up with your congrats X post with corrupt EFF officials? Congrats?
Twitter post.
Yeah, but what did I say? I mean, I mean, all I know is that the VBS scandal is now all being thrashed out in the media. I mean, I honestly haven't been paying that much attention this weekend to local news, but I know that the whistleblower, the guy who benefited, he got some 300 million rand from VBS when they looted that bank. And obviously some of it went to the EFF as well, which is why Floyd and Julius are running at the moment, because they're trying to patch this up and make it look like they weren't just stealing from old people. But this guy who has been the main criminal, the main crook in the story, apparently he went through 300 million rand in the space of a couple of years, and he's now living in like a servant's room on some property in Bryanston. How do you blow 300? Just think about this for a second. Forget about the EFF for a moment. We can get into that later. And we all know that there's probably skullduggery aplenty going on there. But imagine going through 300 million rand. I mean, that would last my family 3 generations before we'd even. How do you piss away 300 million rand?
Is there any proof of what he spent on?
Well, probably fancy cars and, holiday houses and first-class trips to places. But even so, I mean, 300 million rand, it beggars belief.
Yeah.
How do you spend that much money?
No, it's crazy.
It's wild, right? I mean,
Yeah.
these people are these thieves, these crooks who have been eating at the trough in South African politics and using political influence to steal money. These guys just clearly are, the sort of people who couldn't manage a piss up in a brewery, because as soon as they have money,
cowboys.
It's gone.
Cowboys.
But it's like, there's no amount of money that can rescue these people from poverty, because the poverty's in here. So even if you gave them $1 billion, they'd find a way to piss it away in no time. And that must be a very, very depressing thing to think about. If you're some politician who is trying to steal money, that actually it doesn't matter how much you steal, you're just never going to have enough, because there will always be a way to reduce you to poverty. It's just incredible.
Yeah. As I saw from Bitcoin Boot hashtag, I blew it. But that just shows you how quickly people can burn through that money.
And Vyasant says in the comments, apparently the EFF was being paid R1 million a month. Again, how do you, if you're getting R1 million a month, even if it's through legitimate means, how do you waste that? I mean, the EFF are constantly looking for more money. What are they doing with it? Beaver says crack and whores. I love the way Beaver says crack and whores. That's hilarious.
No, Beaver, that's how we would spend it.
He spent it all, says Judas, because he stole it. If he didn't, he'd have to pay it back. Well, apparently they're going after him. The sheriff arrived at this little cottage stroke back room that he's living in. And he has to pay some 43,000 rand for school fees that he hasn't paid. So can you imagine being his kid and, your dad is in the news because he can't pay your school fees? Imagine how hard that is on a child, that your dad is a crook, confessed crook. He himself has said, yes, I stole it. Now he's living in squalor and he can't afford to pay your school fees. I mean, just imagine how that ruins a child. You would almost
because
you'd rather be poor.
If he was a good father, he would have invested something for that child at least. So no, that child's broken. His brain is broken now.
Yeah. And then our own Ruth is in the comments, is of course rebellious Ruth. She is the chairperson of the comments section, not Dr. Ruth, who's now dead.
Yes.
By the way, someone else is also dead. I didn't tell you about. Remember Richard Simmons, the fitness guy, the weird.
Yeah.
Remember him? Because he kind of disappeared for a long time, but apparently he has died. He was known as an unrelentingly positive fitness guy. Kind of strange, but he celebrated his 76th
like leg warmers and things, right?
That's it. He celebrated his 76th birthday on Friday, and then seems to have died over the weekend of natural causes. No foul play suspected, but talk about timing. You have your birthday and then you die.
Yeah. Your face, Gareth, seems to have been replaced by a little plus.
There we go. There we go. Can you see me now? Sorry.
I'm like a dog.
Oh. Hey, let's get into some sport. We haven't checked in on the sport with James. Producer James, where are you? Let's see what he's got for us in terms of sports results.
Awesome.
Hello, James.
Can you guys hear me?
Oh, look at him sitting there in the green screen studio. Yes. Hello, James.
I look a mess because I overslept this morning, but we're here.
You're useless. That's why we started the show late. So anybody who wants to climb into James in the comments section, go ahead. But first, let's get some sports results. Of course, this is our Beyond the Scoreboard weekend sports recap with Super Bets. What do we got?
We have quite a lot from this past weekend, actually. We'll start with the rugby. New Zealand took on England 24-17 to the All Blacks there. Australia took on Wales 36-28 to Australia there. Argentina and France, they played out 33-25 to Argentina. And then our dear box, they lost it in the last dying seconds. Heartbreaking stuff, huh? Did you watch it, Gareth?
I didn't watch it. You know I don't care about rugby at all, but I knew what was going on because there were other people around me who were massively upset, and I understand. Like I'm with you.
It's tough to take. So yeah, that was that. I think we play Portugal next, if I'm not mistaken. I didn't know Portugal played rugby, so there's that. That's a learning curve for me. Curry Cup also happened this weekend. Greek took on the Sharks. They beat the Sharks there 34-31. The Pumas took on the Lions. The Lions won that game 75-21. The Cheetahs took on the Western Province 37-17 was the final score there to the Cheetahs. And then finally, the Bulls took on the Griffins 52-10 to the Bulls was how that one played out. In the world of football, where my life has meaning, and no longer because the Euros ended last night. So now there's genuinely no meaning. Spain beat England in the UEFA Euro final. They won 2-1 in that game. So Spain scored first. Then England decided they wanted to equalize the game. And then another game in the dying seconds where Spain took the victory. So, yeah, quite a good night for Spain. Speaking of Spain, Carlos Alcaraz, he also won Wimbledon against Djokovic. Great day for Spain. He won Wimbledon 6-2, 7-6. I now moved on to tennis, but just lastly on the football, Copa America, the final was at 2:00 this morning. I did not watch it, and that's not the reason I'm late. No. Argentina, surprise, surprise, they won. They beat Colombia. They're 1-0. So Argentina are your Copa America champions. And then lastly, back to the world of tennis, Barbara Krejcikova has been crowned Wimbledon women's singles champion. It's the first time a Czech star has won the tournament. There's now been a first-time winner of the women's singles Wimbledon for 7 successive years. Just a young fun fact Monday. It's Monday. It's not Friday.
Oh, my God.
And that's the sports wrap.
All right. Well, producer James says, Louis, I wouldn't trust you to sit the right way around on a toilet seat. And lots of people here. Fiasen says, I lost all my money this weekend. So sorry about that. Yeah, I mean, listen, there was a lot of sport. And we didn't even really talk much about the Tour de France, but for some people, that's the big thing. That's some, people who like cycling. I've never met such a person, but there are such people in the world, apparently. And they're into this. For most people watching the Tour de France, it's like nice scenery. That's really the reason most people would watch it. But there we go. Thank you, James. Okay, that is, of course, the sports recap. Superbets supports responsible gambling. Strictly no under 18s. Winners know when to stop. The South African Responsible Gambling Foundation's toll-free counselling hotline 0800 006 008. Superbets bringing you the weekend sports recap. Okay, so did you do anything fun this weekend, Ass?
No, I wouldn't say anything fun. Yeah, I'm a bit of a Debbie Downer when it comes to weekends these days because they are spent with my mum and dad. So no, nothing to report. I think I have more fun in the office, that's for sure.
Sure.
In fact, we've had there was a big office scam going on. Not a scam, what's it called when you prank someone? A big office prank.
Oh, okay.
And
God, if it was a scam, I think it'd be a big problem.
We thought we were pranking someone else, and they turned the prank around onto us. And this has involved like people going on missions in their cars, filming each other secretly, talk of affairs. It's been crazy. So there are lots of shenanigans here to keep us interested.
It sounds like your office sounds like it's a pretty wild place.
Yeah, it is pretty wild. And then there's a lot of hard work to do as well. So, yeah.
God, okay. Well, as long as there's
that's
a bit
why I'm
of
here
balance.
so early.
I can tell there's a lot of pressure on you. By the way, you're the only person in the office?
Yeah, I'll give you a little spin.
Yeah.
So here's my
going
desk behind me.
Ah, okay.
Oh, no one there. And the boss.
Is it a bit spooky? Is it a bit spooky for you to be there on your own first thing in the morning?
Yeah, this is the earliest I've been here. And even the security guard had to come and unlock the big gate. And then another security guard had to tell me how to turn on the light.
Yeah,
so that was a bit like, ooh. And also these lights turn on and off by themselves. So that was a bit spooky too. Because I drove past and this light was on. But yeah.
There's someone in the office. Okay, come on, James. You watched the Argentina game, hence you overslept, says Snipes in the comments. No, I don't think that's the reason. He just overslept, which happens, but I'm annoyed by it because we started a little bit late this morning. Now, you have something to add on this. I heard this term being used the other day. I took a flight down to Cape Town on Saturday, obviously, and I'm flying back today. This idea of raw dogging. Now, obviously, raw dogging doesn't mean what I thought it did, because people are raw dogging on flights, and it's not what you think it is either. I mean, when I first heard this term, it's like sex without a condom, right?
Yeah, also, I actually did think it's something.
If people are doing
too.
that on flights, yeah, I mean, it sounds like. I mean, that's what I always understood the term to mean, but that's not what it means.
No, and I mean, even the subheading, this wild approach to travel, suddenly all over social media has some benefits. What's wild? What could get more wild than having sex on a plane?
All right, I'm really tired of like Gen Z and the millennials taking words that already have a meaning and changing them. Like,
so yeah,
we've got a meaning for this word already. What does it mean?
So it means just not doing anything on a flight. You know, the way we have our devices, the way we watch whatever's on the screen. It means not doing anything, not reading anything, just no headphones, no book, no form of entertainment or diversions, and not even napping, just watching that ever-present map of where you are. And apparently the benefits are supposed to be like, clear your head, being mindful, etc. But I don't know. I'm not the world's greatest flyer, and I need to be distracted. It would feel like torture for me if I had to do that.
You know, I often think about this with my little nephews. They always have to have something to do, and I know it's not just them. When I was a kid, I used to go, I'm bored all the time. But being bored is actually really important. Like, you have to learn to be bored. And it strikes me as no achievement whatsoever if you can sit on a flight and not do anything. It's not an achievement. You're not doing anything amazing or heroic by doing nothing. And the fact that people think that that's a struggle, that it's hard to just be doing nothing, is the most insane thing I've ever heard. I've often sat on a flight, and sometimes it is the best thing for you to do because it's the one place that you don't have your phone on. You don't have to be responding to messages. You're not constantly on social media or, doing stuff on a device of some kind. It's like it's the one place you can escape from that. And now, Gen Z thinks that they're some kind of like, what are you,
Hero.
Hercules? Because you're Hercules because you don't switch on your device for a whole 2 hours. It's madness. This is not an achievement.
So the author who tried this for himself, he went as far as he thought, well, let me do this properly and see if there's a real point to it. And he went all the way, like even declining any refreshments from the flight attendants. Anyway, he said, I would like to say I came out of this with some kind of lesson, some kind of epiphany or emotional growth. I got nothing out of this at all. The 2.5 hour flight felt like a 4 hour flight. But I mean, you think about how we grew up. I grew up watching analog clocks and, being interested to see how the seconds turn over and watching that. That's being mindful. That's raw dogging us, if that's what that is. But yes, all these trends,
I don't know why this is a subject. I mean, like, it's incredible to me how doing nothing needs a word, and people who are doing that somehow think they're achieving. So it's just incredible how low the barrier for entry is for people to actually consider themselves useful in society. It's wild. By the way, I see a comment here from John. He says, I thought I'd tune into the Gareth Cliff show to see what he thinks of the Donald Trump shooting. But again, we're talking about farts. Have we mentioned farts once?
Not once. I don't know what you're watching.
John, yeah, you're on the wrong show, obviously. And we talked for the first 20 minutes of the show about Donald Trump and the shooting. What, do you want me to carry on just because you've joined now? How about you wake up and join us at the right time, you lazy son of a bitch? Right?
Oh, gosh.
Gen X and Z are... He's raw dogging it. That's it. Luando says Gen X and Z are bored. That's why the new meaning is created. Yeah, I mean, have you thought about like the value of being bored? It's a really good thing for kids to learn about being bored. You don't constantly need stimulation. You need to be able to be still and be quiet and focused and actually get your shit together. It's the wildest thing to me that these kids need to have something to do all the time. It's a weakness. So Sugar Shabalala says, lol, forgive him, Gareth. He's just late like James Biden. I like the way they're calling James Biden at the moment. This is good fun. All right. Something else that I wanted to ask you about, talking about generational stuff. Do your socks make you look old? Gen Z thinks so.
Every time I look at Twitter, there are Gen Zers talking about these are the things that give your age away. There was a TikTok which gained huge popularity of a young girl saying, these things these are the things that you do when you're over the age of 30. And obviously the people over 30 are climbing in and chatting back. But apparently the sock thing, right? I'm sure some of you have heard of it. In fact, Gareth, you and I spoke about it. It's now about wearing your socks up high, so sort of half calf length, and secret socks not being a thing anymore.
Right.
So apparently it gives your age away. Having a wallet apparently gives your age away. And I've seen that for myself. And I looked at my wallet today and I thought, do I really need this? Everything's kind of on my phone at the moment. And, then having a little case on your little wallet section on your iPhone case, right? Have you gone that route yet?
No. So let's start with the socks. I sometimes, like at gym, for example, will wear the socks halfway up the calf, but I don't really think about it. Like if someone's actually considering this as an important identifier, like I feel sorry for you.
No, exactly.
Socks and, this is bizarre. I mean, what a strange thing to busy yourself with.
I know.
As for the wallet, I do have a wallet, but I hardly use it. I mean, it usually stays either in the car or in my bag, or I sometimes leave it at home because, again, everything is on here, right? So everything's on your phone. The only thing that you occasionally need is your ID. And there are some places where you can't just tap your phone and you have to actually use a card. So it's usually around, but I mean, I can fit all of that into a little, like basically some little pouch with 2 card slots in it, and then I'm good.
Yeah, no, I've got to get onto that. I've still got a traditional purse with loads and loads of loyalty cards lined up.
But I
need to get those all online.
You can get an app now. Yeah, I use this one, and it works for Macro, for Woolworths, for Checkers, all of these things. It's called Store Card, and that can do all the things that you need it to do. So it's got your
old school.
Oh wow! Look at that. There's so many. What are all those? Jesus, what have you got there?
Where do you? Oh, I'm just like, what, bank card, medical aid, eBucks. Why do I have an eBucks card? When would I use that?
I mean, you don't need a card. I've never had a card for eBucks. Wow.
And then these aren't store cards. They're not credit store cards. They're just like loyalty cards, like wellness.
But, I mean, this app can
Wellness
store
Warehouse.
all your loyalty cards. You don't need.
I need to get onto it. Absolute
Do it. Just download it today. It's a piece of cake. Yeah.
Yeah. Got to get into that. Okay, so that we agree with, right? That you're kind of giving. You're probably over 30 if you still have a wallet, etc. But I think a lot of people are changing. Then she's into the whole side parting thing.
What's that?
I have naturally.
Okay, so
it's been a thing.
What if you have a
while.
side parting? You're old.
Yes. You need to have a middle parting.
Jesus.
I just don't have any more. If I look in my bag, there are no more fucks to give, really. This is how my hair falls. You know? And then there are, apparently, pedicures aren't such a big thing anymore. And I asked my Gen Z colleague about this. And people aren't getting their toes out so much, even in summer. There's like this aversion to seeing people's toes.
I have to be honest with you. Like, it sounds to me as if Gen Z have done so little with their lives that they're finding boring, uninteresting shit like raw dogging on flights, like how high you pull your socks up, like whether you have a wallet or not. These are their achievements. These are like, these are the things that separate me from the herd. These are the things that make me cool and interesting. Like, these are not achievements. They're not wonderful things that you could take credit for. It's just ordinary stuff. You should be embarrassed that this is all that you've got to talk about that separates you from everyone else.
They're going to have to face a lot of shit in their lives, and I don't know if they're going to handle it. I don't have much faith at this point.
Listen, I mean, we don't want to sound like those people who, we're the best generation and everyone else is stupid. But honestly, like,
no, exactly.
Gen X, drop us in the middle of nowhere and we'll find our way back to civilization. We'll be able to make it. I don't think that's true for so many people in Gen Z. Unbelievable.
No, this is very true. And it goes on with Stanley Cups. Apparently they're an old thing, but then American high school teachers were getting on and saying every second pupil has a Stanley Cup. I don't know what you're talking about.
Well, that was a very big thing last year already. We were talking about how like all the moms have like their Stanley Cup with their coffee in it on their way to drop the kids at school or pick them up from sports or whatever. So it probably is an older thing. Although, I mean, I don't know if Stanley Cups have taken off in this country the way that they have in America. I've certainly seen some people with them.
I have seen, yes. Yeah, it's like a bit of a status symbol. I think they cost quite a lot for what it is. Did you want to hear more?
Yeah.
If you want to.
No, go. I mean, like, I'm just blown away that these are the things that Gen Z is proud of.
Oh no, it's ridiculous. Polka dots. We aren't wearing polka dots if we're below 30. Apparently, that ages you.
Wow.
More than one piece of jewelry. So you'll have just earrings and nothing else, or just a ring and nothing else, or just a necklace and nothing else.
Yeah, but that's because Gen Z has no money because they haven't earned any.
No, that could be true. And then the last one, using a shopping bag as your handbag. So, but this is true. You'll see an old lady with a Louise bag, and she's got everything in there: her purse, her glasses, her tissues, her groceries.
I must be honest with you, I've never really noticed this.
Yeah, no, well, it's a thing. But now the tote bag thing is coming back, but they're just being called tote bags, but they're little normal handbags. So yes, all these things to be mindful of if you have any facts to give.
I don't, but I'm glad that you filled me in so I know how uncool I am. Whoopee. I don't mind. I really don't care about being uncool. No. I've never really given a shit, so it's not going to start now.
This is true.
Apparently, Viasan says Hollywood's making a new Gladiator. I saw the trailer for the new... No, well, it's not the same thing. And it's not a Gladiator with Cheech and Chong, but yeah, they're making a new Gladiator movie. Obviously, Russell Crowe's not in it because his original character, Maximus, dies, so he can't come back in Gladiator 2. It's not a soap opera. But I saw the trailer for it the other day. It looks pretty damn good. It really does look awesome. Yeah, I think I'll watch it. I haven't seen a movie trailer for a long time that I thought, yeah, I want to see that. But Gladiator 2, I think I'll go and take a look at. Sounds pretty good. Mapello says, I don't have a wallet. I always use my phone everywhere. Samsung Wallet stores every card I have, even store cards. But last week I lost my phone and I couldn't go home. I became a beggar. See.
Yeah. How often do we forget our phone somewhere? It happens a lot.
Yeah. And let me tell you, if you leave your phone behind these days, you are in a big spot of shit because it's going to be very difficult for you to get anything working. People can't navigate, so they don't know where to drive. They don't remember destinations. They don't know how to get home. They have no money on their person.
No driver's license.
They don't have ID. They don't have anything. So your phone is like such an integral part of your equipment. It's kind of, if you just should strap it to yourself. Funny enough, I was talking to someone the other day about like the kind of stuff that's coming off of this in terms of radiation, because we have them on us the whole time. And this one friend of mine has a pouch that he keeps it in because he refuses to have, and this pouch is like insulated or whatever. He refuses to have all this dangerous radiation leaking out of his phone and like making him sterile or giving him cancer or whatever he thinks is going to happen.
There would have been people dying from that already. It's been around long enough.
Well, has it? I mean, it's only been a couple of years. I think, we'll only know in another generation whether or not these things really have started to affect us. I'm not sure. Shani says, be honest, Gareth, you were in Cape Town to see Engelbert Humperdinck. I didn't know he was in Cape Town. Engelbert Humperdinck. I mean, that's one of your favorites, Leanne, isn't it?
I'm trying. Why is the name's very familiar? One time, but I'm looking him up.
His most famous song is "Fly with Me, Lesbian Seagull."
Oh, that's him. I see him now. Goodness.
Shame.
Is he really in Cape Town?
Well, that's what Shani says. Why would we not believe her?
He's going to, as part of his last hurrah, he'll also be serenading Gauteng fans.
Oh, exciting times.
I'm trying to see when exactly that is. He's had a 6-decade career.
Yeah, been around a long time.
It's the last waltz farewell tour. He'll be at Times Square Casino in Pretoria and then making his way to Cape Town. So it's probably already
pick your event. You got to go and see him. Cunning Stunt says he's always in Sun City. I don't know. Engelbert Humperdinck. There's someone I am not in a hurry to go and see. I mean, good luck to him. Janine says, I love Gen Z's explanation for not making their beds. It's a scientific fact that if you make your bed, it's a breeding ground for more bed bugs. It seems like this generation that we're talking about here, they're just prepared to do as little as possible and get credit for as much as possible. I don't know how to respond to that. I really don't know what to say to it. It's embarrassing.
Oh boy.
Jethro says you can load your virtual bank card on your fitness watch. Most supported now. Good option if you lose your phone. So then you just scan with your watch. I had an Apple Watch for a while, and I mean mine was like the first generation, and I just never bothered to upgrade it because then it just gets expensive. You're upgrading your phone the whole time, your laptop, your watch, your iPad. Who needs all this stuff? You really just need the phone.
Well, I said it the other day. I can't wait until we get to what was predicted in the Book of Revelations, where we just have a chip. It'll be so much better than all of this stuff.
Exciting times, Leanne. It's coming. Don't worry. Okay, listen, it's 7 o'clock. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be back in just a moment. Don't go anywhere. Leanne Mole and I are here on the Gareth Cliff Show on the Real Network. We will be back in just a moment with a whole lot more.
Plug-in hybrids, a little bit fancier. I know.
Well, I had a plug-in hybrid a while back, the Toyota RAV4 2.5 plug-in hybrid, and it just came as a unit for local media to test out, to see how it would be received here. And I see they are now going to market. So with the plug-in hybrid, you plug it in, but there's always that reserve of the engine. So even if you do run out of battery power, you've still got the engine to fall back on. So it's really just the best of both worlds. But obviously, when you've got electric power, your fuel consumption will be so much better. But it doesn't mean that if you're stuck in the middle of nowhere and you've run out of battery power, that you can't go anywhere. So I think for people who would want to own fully electric cars, the plug-in hybrid is almost there. But for people who have range anxiety, obviously, it's a lot better.
Catch us every Monday at 9 a.m. on YouTube and on autotrader.co.za.
The way you described how you don't really think when these things happen, you just go into your body takes over.
Yeah.
It's not your mind anymore.
And I think that
kind of makes you wonder who you really are. Are you in your head? Are you in your body? Is there something else? And that idea that you crossed over, that fascinates me, that you, at some point, you just gave up. You were like, and it wasn't like giving up. You were at peace.
No.
You were like, if this is the end, this is the end.
Yeah. But it's taken me a few years to start formulating sentences and thoughts around things I've experienced in the ocean. So day one of being an amputee, everything is so fresh. You medicated, 10 out of 10. You are in hospital, and there's all this new stuff that's about to start happening.
I have a fun fact for that, actually. So Spain have been fined every game that Yamin Lamal has played.
Because he can't drive to the stadium?
Well, it has to do with his age. You can't work under the age of 18 in Germany. And so in one of the games, they pulled him off to avoid the fine. But then for the rest of them, they were just like, screw it, let's keep him on the field.
That is crazy.
Yeah.
James, that's a great fun fact.
Yeah.
Shout out to you, James.
He also did his homework on this Euros photos, many photos of it hidden doing homework.
So. Okay, the second thing wasn't
You
kind of pushed it a bit farther.
You did too much.
All right. Good morning and happy Monday. It is the 15th of July. Before you know it, we'll be through this month of July, August downhill to December. Winter will be over. Yippee.
And then we start again.
I don't want to wish anything away. I mean, I like, I enjoy every day. I like being alive, but winter I've had enough of. I'm up to here with it now. So the sooner the better. I mean, I really do hope. And Cape Town, by the way, it's been raining here non-stop.
Yeah, I think there was some heavy flooding in areas too, so that's not always good. But it is rainy season, right, for Cape Town? So you get everything over and done with at once, the rain and the cold.
we came into land on Saturday, and the runway was really wet, and it's never fun. You kind of worry that you're going to skid all over the place, but these pilots are so damn good at what they do, and the planes are so good, and it's just incredible. Like you don't even worry about it, frankly. And then driving from the airport out towards Stellenbosch, there are like all these new lakes that are like on either side of the road. It's just water everywhere. So Cape Town is now the Lake District. It's quite something.
Wow.
And even going to sleep on Saturday night and last night, the rain kind of comes and you hear it like, coming down on the roof, and then it's quiet, and then it comes down again. It's like completely irregular. You get these bursts of rain. It's really, there's something quite magical about Cape Town in the winter, but it's not my favorite thing. And you say you kill two birds with one stone, with the cold and the rain, but I prefer our summer rain in Gauteng, frankly.
Yeah, it's good. It's refreshing.
Carl says, I don't want winter to end. I was supposed to build a swimming pool this winter, but I've not got house plans yet. Slow the fuck down. Yeah, I've got to do something. I've got to do two things. And obviously the best stuff you can do at this time of year in Gauteng is the stuff that you don't want to do when it's raining. Like I have to paint the roof, and I have to have some trees cut down, because in winter it's the best time to do it, right? You can actually see what's going on. It's not all like green and overgrown. So those are big projects I have to get underway. But again, it's like these things are so expensive and irritating. Do you do it? Do you not do it? I know that I can't wait for summer. I've got to do it now. So I've just got to bite the bullet.
Sure. Now, one of the things, the projects that my brother and I have at the moment is moving my parents from the house they've been in for 20 years into something more manageable.
Right.
And it's the thing that you think about as a child, one day we're going to have to pack up this house.
Yeah.
And then it happens. And the amount of stuff you accumulate over 20 years, we've got our work cut out for us. We did like a bit of a surface scan the other day. And I think the plan was to start doing something, but it was just too overwhelming. There's an attic, there's a cottage, there's an office. It's going to be a lot.
Tell me, because I know we're not in the midst of summer now, but in the Northern Hemisphere they are. And there's apparently this thing that's going on. There's this trend on TikTok, which I know nothing about because I'm not on TikTok. And I'm so grateful for it. But apparently they're using beer to get a tan. What's this all about?
It's so stupid. It's another. Look, the inputs I've had this morning is all about trends and stupid things that are happening. But we have to be aware of them, right?
Yeah, right.
So there are some social media users are saying that cheap beer is the secret to a bronze summer tan. So we've heard of people using oil. In our days, we used to put on cooking oil and lie in the sun, which was really dangerous. We also spent a lot of time on sunbeds, which was really, really bad. But apparently now people are saying, pour cheap beer on your skin in the sun to get a tan, because the hops in the beer can make you tan faster. And so, of course, a clinical professor of dermatology at Stanford, Dr. Zakia Rahman, has said, unfortunately, this is wrong for many reasons. So yes, firstly, no tan is a safe tan, number one.
Wow.
And the beer is absolutely doing nothing to help you tan or to protect you from the sun. It'll just help you get sunburn, basically. I like to hear. Sorry, go ahead.
No, that's what they're after. They just want to get a nice tan. There's so many ways to do this now that don't have to involve you actually lying in the sun or putting some dangerous shit on your skin. There are. I know that there are girls that are using those like instant tan things.
Yeah, spray tans.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. There are lots of other ways. Apparently, you would, by pouring beer over your body. The alcohol's drying out your skin, so that's not good. And it will likely wash off any sunscreen that you have applied. You'll smell like cheap beer is one of the things that's not great about that. And also it attracts bugs and insects and bees. So I want to see how that works.
That's lovely. You basically get stung by a whole bunch of insects. All right. Well, another stupid trend that, thank God for you, Leanne, we'd never know these things. It's very important.
I do like the accompanying cartoon though. It's of a boot on the beach pouring beer onto his biceps and his chest. Yeah. And there's a black family sitting underneath the umbrella drinking beer and looking at their beers and to say, what the hell is this guy doing? And they're just enjoying their beer.
I mean, Louis makes a very good comment. What a waste of beer. For a South African to waste beer on a stupid tan is kind of crazy. Why does it seem like a beer tan would be the same as a car guard tan, says Carl. Yeah, I mean, we all know what a car guard tan looks like. And somebody else in the comments in the comment section made this comment. Lovely Lady Lee says, I can believe that. Have you seen the change in skin color on drunkards? You get those drunks who like go this purple color. Not a great look.
Yeah, but that's from the inside, hey? That's like you're pickling on the inside, man.
All right, one last thing before we get to Professor Szabo, who I'm very keen to talk to. We haven't spoken to him in ages, but I always like to hear about the latest features on your phone that you don't know you can use. And evidently, no matter how well you think you know your phone, no matter how much you're on it or how much you use it, there are always things that you don't know you can do with your phone. So here is Leanne Moll with some useful tips that you probably didn't know about.
I saw this one quite a while back, and I haven't put it into use yet, but it's popping up again. And that's how you can send secret chats using iPhone notes on your phone. So I use notes a lot just to jot stuff down. But you can actually use it in secret chats. You don't need these like shady apps or anything like that. Apparently, you basically go to compile a new note. It has to be a new note.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, I'm just scrolling through the millions of apps that are popping up, which is very annoying. So you create a new compose button, new note, and then type anything in the note just to keep it. Otherwise, it'll automatically be deleted when you exit from the note. You can also go into an existing note. It's best to just start fresh.
Right.
Then you adjust the note's share options. So on the little more button, you would hit share note. And now you tap share options and make sure that you have the can make changes option selected under permission.
Okay.
You should also toggle off anyone can add people in case you want to be the only person who can add collaborators.
Right.
And then you now add the person that you want to share whatever it is with.
And then anything you type in that note, that other person will see updated on their phone?
Yes. It becomes a live document. So you can have your conversation. Yeah.
People don't check the notes app, so you'd probably get away with having these secret conversations. Maybe you're cheating on someone or something a lot more dodgy than that. That's clever.
Absolutely. So yeah, that's one way. I mean, obviously you can just delete it very easily. So that's how to send secret messages using notes.
Okay.
And then this one, which when I read it, I thought, I wonder how many people have done this to me. I don't know if it's ever happened with you, but how to use your iPhone as a spy trick. So this lets you basically eavesdrop on people in the room while you've left the room. So it would work very well in like an office situation where you say, I'm off to the loo, leave your phone on the desk. And basically you need to have something called live listen, which turns your iPhone or your iPad into a microphone that sends sound to your AirPods or your Beats. It doesn't work with any other wireless headphones. It has to be AirPods or Beats.
Okay.
The feature is actually designed to help you hear a conversation in a noisy area. But you can actually just walk away with your AirPods and just listen to what people are saying about you after you've left the room.
I'm just thinking about the possible applications for this, because people are always trying to spy on each other and kind of hear things that they're not meant to hear. And you wouldn't think twice if someone left their phone on the table. In fact, you'd think the fact that they left their phone means that they trust you, because your phone is staying on the table. So you go off to the bathroom, and then while you're in the bathroom, you can listen to what they're talking about with your phone sitting right there. That's wild.
I'm sure that somebody must have done it to us already. Surely. I mean, I work with developers. They know these things.
They do know these things. So basically, Leanne, I mean, you could have it the other way around, where they can hear you in the loo on your phone. I wonder if they can like reverse it so that basically they hear you flushing
and going la la la
la la. Gosh. And like that was a very strong pee that she just had.
Oh gosh, yeah. I think you're only safe saying things when you're far away from the office and your devices aren't near you.
Yeah, look, just you know what? Don't do anything in secret anymore. Just like expect that someone somewhere is listening to everything that you say. There's no point. Just be yourself. Someone somewhere is going to listen, and it's none of their business, but they're going to hear things anyway. So don't have any secrets. Just be the same person, whether they're
let it all
people
out.
around you. Just be you. Like there's no point anymore. Someone somewhere is going to hear something that they're not meant to, and frankly, if it's you, then stand by it. Nothing to be embarrassed about if it's you and you're not being like a really horrible, hideous person. So basically be the same. Alexa's always listening to me, says that darn kitty. Well, often I think about all these devices around us, and we joke about how Apple and Google and the rest of them kind of know what's going on because they're always listening. And that's how you end up being served ads for things that you talk about. Siri is always listening, says Arbot. Alexa, Siri, all of these things. So if you have a device anywhere near you, chances are that it's spying on you. Someone somewhere is listening. No point in... And you think about the fact that we just discussed in the first hour of the show, how the phone is with you all the time. So if it's with you all the time and it's listening all the time, then somewhere there's all this information being stored up. It's no wonder that people are able to find out things that you probably guess that they wouldn't know, and then you discover too late that they know everything.
Oh gosh, XR says those toys in the background of Leanne's are actually spies. Those eyes are cameras.
Yeah, that Charizard or whatever it is from Pokemon, that thing's probably listening to you as you speak. If it starts moving or it replies, then you know you're...
Oh no, don't freak me out. No, I'm still alone here.
All right. That's plenty of beating up on Gen Z and phone tips for us for this morning. I think it's time for us to talk to somebody who really does know a lot about the state of mental health in South Africa, because there's been a lot of news coverage recently about Life Estimeni and the fact that, they've found the former MEC caused indirectly the deaths of mental health patients by moving them into these smaller institutions and out of Life Estimeni. And that was, of course, Qaedani Mahlangu, who's probably going to go to jail, I would imagine, when all of this is said and done. We've had inquests with Dikgang Moseneke and so many other people. And the judge last week made some very damning remarks about the responsibility the MEC has for causing the death of these mental health patients in Life Estimeni. It was a horrible story when it came out. It just seems to get more horrible over time. And I feel so sorry for the families of these people. And, it's hard enough to get care and consideration if you are a mental health patient, but then to be treated like this, and for the Gauteng Health Department to have thought they could get away with it is just absolutely did. It's disgusting. It's devastating. So I thought we would talk this morning to Professor Christopher Paul Szabo. He's, of course, the former professor and academic head of the Department of Psychiatry at the University of Witwatersrand, head of the clinical department at the Department of Psychiatry at Charlotte Maxeke Johannesburg Academic Hospital. And he's also the host of our podcast series that we've been doing for a couple of years now called Beyond Madness. It's always good to talk to you, Prof. How are you?
Where am I? Can you hear me and can you see me?
Loud and clear. And you look crazy, which is always a good look for a professor of psychiatry.
You're catching me first thing in the morning. I haven't had my 6 beers yet to go lie in the sun.
Oh,
no, don't worry.
Yeah, you can see I'm doing this with my hands. It's pretty frosty in Johannesburg.
It's cool, it's nice. It's nice to see you. I haven't seen you in ages. It feels like much too long.
Yes.
There's so many things in the news that I want to talk to you about, but what's been happening with you? How have you been? I mean, let's spend a couple of minutes catching up. What's news?
Well, a couple of months ago, I took a decision to step back from my clinical practice because after I left the Department of Psychiatry at Wits and Gauteng Health, which was about April 2019, I then focused just on doing clinical work in the private sector, which I did for the last couple of years. And I got to a point where I decided I needed to step back, take a break from everything, and just to see where I might want to go with my life. So you could say that I'm probably on sabbatical, not that I'm doing nothing and not that I have any specific goals in mind, but I'm just learning how to be. I think
you know what, Prof? Change is as good as a holiday, and I'm sure for anybody who feels like they need a change, the best thing you can do is just take a little break from the usual, the humdrum rat race stuff, and kind of reevaluate. It's something that everybody should be doing every couple of years, no matter what they do, right?
Well, I think you talk about mental health, and I think there does come a time where you start to, for example, in your daily routine, start to feel that it's just not working for you anymore. And it's not about the people or the routine, it's just not working. And you have to get to that point where you say, okay, when am I going to take that decision to step back, reflect, review, and maybe reorientate myself in terms of what I want to do? And it's not easy. And maybe you could say that I'm doing it from a more privileged position. I've been working for 30, 40 years. So that's the point that I get to. But even at my age, which I'm not going to reveal, but even at my age, you can decide for yourself. You get to a point where you say, okay, when am I going to live my best life? And I would hope that we are all living our best lives every single day. But there comes a point sometimes where you're just not feeling it. And then you need to think very seriously about what you want to do with your life, and whether you're just going to wait for things to get better or whether you're going to try and make things better. And I think that's the issue.
So, I mean, it must be a massive change for you, and there must be quite a lot of trepidation around giving up your clinical practice, because for decades now you've been helping people and sitting with these nutcases. I know you won't call them that, I will, and trying to help them. I mean, someone in the comments section says here, Prof, you would have your hands full with us in the chat, says Percy, and I think
that's why I'm here.
Right. Yeah. Do you think that you're going to miss it, or is it too soon to make that kind of a call?
You know, I can honestly say I've had a fantastic career and I've enjoyed every minute. And I think that's the point, is that you need to be enjoying it as you started out. You know, there was a time when I started out specializing in psychiatry where I used to wake up in the morning and think, geez, am I getting paid to do this? I better keep quiet because I'm just enjoying it that much. And at the end of the day, if that starts to turn and that starts to change, then you need to reflect. And at the end of the day, there was some trepidation. I remember a friend said to me when I was contemplating this, and this was when I was going to leave the state sector and academia, and he said in his position, he can't afford to leave. And I said, yes, I can't afford to stay. And I think the issue there is that you need to be looking at the extent to what you're doing, firstly in terms of how it defines you, but more specifically, how does it feed you? And I don't just speak here about the financial. I speak about the spiritual. Is it feeding your soul? You have to feel it. And I think that maybe I'm speaking more esoterically, but truly, that's what it came down to. This is not feeding me in that sense. And I don't want to prejudice those I'm there to serve by being less than in a particular situation. And so then you have to step back, reflect, and maybe you'll go back into it. And maybe it's just that you need time out. Maybe you're a little bit burnt out, whatever. Or there's a whole new direction waiting for you. And you'll only uncover that when you step back and you allow it to reveal itself. And I think that's what's important. And I think what's difficult is not knowing, because everybody's question is, so what are you going to do now? And my response is, I'm going to do nothing. I'm just going to be. And I'm just going to pursue the things that interest me. And I think that's often very difficult for people. What do you mean? It's like you haven't got that next thing. Sometimes you don't. Sometimes nothing is the next thing in that moment.
So, I mean, you're not going to become some yogi or swami and like go to India and, you know, run a clinic.
No, listen,
meditate for 24 hours a day.
I've been to India twice. No, and I think that that's not my intention at all. I don't know, you know, because then if you're going to get into that, then you're talking about what? Developing another following. Because eventually when you develop a following, what do you have to do? You have to serve. And so sometimes it's the service that becomes difficult. Sometimes you just want to be free of that and give yourself a chance to recharge. You don't necessarily want to recreate it, but I might, you never know.
So before we leave like the mental health world that you've been such an important part of in South Africa behind, and before we kind of move on to new discussions and new things and new stimulating ideas, what do you think the state of mental health care in South Africa is? You know, this Life Estemeni story, which I opened up with, is just such a disturbing and horrible indictment of the quality of mental health care in South Africa. I don't think we've ever taken it seriously enough. I know you have some very strong feelings about this too, and you've experienced it from the inside and out. But what do you think South African mental health care is really like? And how many people in this country are getting what they really need?
You know, as you were talking, I was thinking to myself, I don't know that I want to see this as an indictment of mental health care. I want to see this as an indictment of the system of mental health care. Because remember, who were the protagonists in this tragedy, this disaster? Not the carers, it was the administrators.
Yeah.
That's where your problem was. And I think that as a good friend of mine, Leonard Erickson, he's a psychiatrist down in Pennington, and he was actually part of Life Estemeni before this all unfolded. He doesn't really want to look at it as the Life Estemeni tragedy. He's more inclined to look at it as the Gauteng Department of Health tragedy. And I think that one has to be very careful in not seeing this as an indictment on mental health care. I think it's the administration. And, you know, at the end of the day, I think one of the things that one learns when you work in institutions are generally only as good as their administrators. You need good administration, but the administration has to be actively engaged with one of its key stakeholders, the clinicians, never mind the patients and the patients' families and all the other stakeholders who are part of the equation. And I think one of the big failings in terms of the Life Estemeni tragedy was the extent to which clinicians were ignored. So when you speak about, you know, whether it's an indictment on mental health care, I would prefer not to see it that way. And in fact, not prefer, I do not see it that way, because I know the people as clinicians who are all committed. And when I speak about clinicians, obviously they're psychiatrists, psychologists, social workers, nurses, occupational therapists. There's a whole team. And that's the one thing that really defines psychiatry and sets it aside from other medical specialties is the multidisciplinary team. We work as a team. Every patient is viewed by a team, certainly in the state sector.
So then let's leave that to one side and not talk about the system so much and the administrators, but let's talk about the quality of mental health care in this country. You and I have had many discussions about how there aren't enough social workers, there aren't enough psychologists, there aren't enough psychiatrists for the population numbers and for the difficulties that people are having. And you know, life in South Africa is tough for so many people, let alone those who have very serious mental health conditions. We know that there isn't the support that people might need, in particularly in rural areas. But what do you make of that, especially with the benefit of the lens of the years of experience that you've got in this sector?
Well, you see, the question really becomes how many psychiatrists is enough? And of course, how many of each will be enough? And I mean, there are obviously norms and standards in terms of what is ideal in terms of numbers per 100,000 population. If you just take psychiatrists, because obviously that's where I'm coming from. I mean, the last data we have, which goes back to 2019, is that we have 1.52 psychiatrists per 100,000 population in South Africa. So that's a specific number. In other African countries, it goes down to 0.01. In European countries, it can go as high as 30. So, you know, okay, so how do you make sense of that? And for me, ultimately, maybe it's not so much a number, it's are the people who have a need having that need serviced. So one has to be careful when you're looking at numbers, as if you reach a certain number, you're done. Of course, when you look at that number, you have to further divide it down into private sector versus state sector, and very specifically, because you've alluded to that, urban versus rural. And I think that if you look at the rural population in this country, we're talking about 0.03 psychiatrists per 100,000. So there is a definite underservicing of the rural setting relative to the urban setting. And then in South Africa, it gets even more specific in terms of province. So certainly Gauteng and the Western Cape are probably the best in the urban areas, are the best serviced. I think Gauteng has something like 2.6 per 100,000 and the Western Cape just over 5.2 per 100,000. So you're seeing this variation within the country. You're seeing it by comparison to other countries within continent and beyond. So what does that all mean at the end of the day? And again, I come back to, is the patient getting what they need? And again, just to go back to the multidisciplinary element of what we're talking about in terms of psychiatry, there are many players who are forming part of the team. So it's not that every single person who has a psychiatric condition necessarily has to always be seeing a psychiatrist. And I think that also has to be clearly understood. And not every difficulty that a person experiences in their life necessarily qualifies as psychiatric. You know, we can all have emotional difficulties or struggles at any particular point in time. We don't need to see a psychiatrist.
Prof, do we have any idea of the number of undiagnosed mental health conditions in the country? I mean, there are probably people in rural South Africa, some of whom must be going through some very serious stuff. You know, we have issues with malnutrition. We have issues with abuse. We have all kinds of very fertile ground for people to develop very, very serious conditions. We're not talking about like, you know, some Gen Z teenager who's got like anxiety. We're talking about serious, serious problems. I wonder how much of that we even have a grip on, we even have a hold on, we even have some idea of in terms of the scale of it. Because we are a country that we have serious issues. Like people, there's a lot of trauma in this country. There's a lot of real lack of resources, lack of basic healthcare, let alone mental health care, and violence and all kinds of really shitty things that make it difficult for people to develop while their brains are still soft as kids or as young adults, the right mental health environment, the right kind of container for all of that stuff.
Well, I mean, it's always difficult to know what you don't know, because you don't know what you don't know. So one can only assume. So I mean, there is data, and once again, you know, we get into numbers where there was the South African Stress and Health Study, which goes back to 2009. So it's old data, which was kind of an epidemiological survey using standardized questionnaires going into populations and looking to see what is the prevalence of diagnosable mental illness. They did interviews, etc. So. If you look at a 12-month prevalence, and the most common psychiatric conditions in that sense would be anxiety disorders, substance abuse, and mood disorders. Those are your big three.
Okay.
And we're looking over a 12-month period of anything between 5 to 8% of the population. That's a lot. That's a lot of people who are potentially, and these are not patients that they were talking about. This was going into the community and looking at a stratified sample, etc. So to answer your question, there may be a lot of undiagnosed mental illness out there. But I think what's important is really not necessarily to categorize it as mental illness, but there is certainly emotional distress and there is struggle. So then you ask the question, okay, so what do you do about that? Where does that go in terms of care? And then we start getting into issues of self-awareness, how one is aware of oneself in terms of what one is experiencing, in terms of mood or behavior, and how you're impacting on your immediate environment. And I think using the word immediate environment, I'm talking family, friends, peers, workers, schoolmates, depending on your age and where you are. And I think good mental health probably starts with sound communities. Because at the end of the day, what is the foundation of our being? And one would like idealistically to assume it comes from the home, our parents, our grandparents, family, grandparents. You know, one of the biggest, there was a very good article that was published a little while back, and the terminology within the title was deaths of despair. And they were looking at suicide, substance abuse, and poor physical health within the context of United States of America versus 16 European countries, and seeing how the deaths of despair have increased in the American setting, and looking at what is going on in their society. And the issue of breakdown of family, the loss of 3-generation families, grandparents, parents, children, being reduced to the nuclear family, mom, dad, children, being reduced to the single parent. Yeah. And so what we're seeing is this change in societal structure, and then the link with your neighbors, your community, and the breakdown there, where we've become increasingly isolated, and loneliness is a big issue. So
right.
When you,
I feel like I've been asking all my questions, but Leanne, who's got serious mental health problems of her own,
has she?
Oh my God. Are you joking? She's got lots of questions.
Yeah, there's no problem. There's no problem with being undiagnosed in this head. It's all been diagnosed. It's all been medicated, and it's all under control. No, just picking
we'll take
up.
Your word. We'll take your word for it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, just picking up off of what I've seen in the comments is that it's still such a misunderstood phenomenon, mental health. And because I've, learned things myself, firstly through studying a little bit at varsity when it came to psychology, secondly, just having an interest in it, having family members who have required either, psychological or psychiatric treatment. And just, with being a journalist and an inquisitive mind and wanting to know all these things, I'm still so shocked how some people don't understand psychology, don't understand psychiatry. Some people still think it's not necessary. And that must be a massive thing in rural areas particularly, where you're set aside as somebody who's crazy, or the spirits are taking over their bodies and they never get treated, never get diagnosed. I mean, that must still be the biggest thing, one of the biggest issues here.
Well, I think that in the rural setting, and not just the rural setting, but in the urban setting as well, you cannot ignore traditional healers. And I think that we have a very specific understanding of what mental illness is from a Western perspective. And there are different interpretations. And I think there are different pathways to care. I think increasingly there is an awareness of what constitutes something that a traditional healer could realistically deal with. And those would generally be issues within a person's life that don't necessarily represent something, for example, like schizophrenia with frank delusions and psychotic phenomena. So I think that in certain settings, there are different modalities of care that exist, which don't necessarily conform to how we, in a Western setting and a Western biomedical setting, would look at things. And so I think in South Africa, the role of the traditional healer, I think, is being increasingly explored and I think understood. And I think there's more collaboration between professional, medical professionals and traditional healers. And certainly psychiatry has been very sensitive to that for the very reasons that you've kind of alluded to, where, for example, it might be seen that what we would necessarily regard as constituting a psychiatric disorder may be viewed very differently in that setting. And therefore, there may be an inclination to move the person away from the biomedical situation into the more traditional, which may not always be in the best interest of the patient, obviously, or the individual with the problem. And that's where the liaison comes in. And I think one has to respect the fact that there are alternative pathways and that there are alternative systems of care. And I think as a psychiatrist, one needs to be very cognizant of that, very mindful of that, very respectful of that, and you've got to work with that within your patients. Yes.
I'm fairly fascinated by and it's come up quite a lot in conversations I've had with people, this idea of generational trauma and you know, the epigenetic kind of stuff that, and I know you and I are both interested in this stuff. Have we seen any real and meaningful developments in respect of kind of the research around this stuff? Have we got any better a handle on what that might be? Because we know in so many parts of the world, not just South Africa, there are deep scars that do go across generations. And, you know, we like that term, the phrase, the sins of the father shouldn't be visited upon the son or the daughter. But I think, you know, the genes carry so much information that we don't completely understand. And I'm pretty sure that there's a nature and a nurture element to this stuff. Have we made any real progress lately on discovering what that might be?
I'm not sure that we have, to be honest with you. Maybe artificial intelligence will do it for us. There's another threat, but to the environment. But I think that the idea of genetics and destiny, I think, also has to be looked at, because you mentioned the term epigenetics, and there we're looking at the fact that you and I may have, let's say, the same genetic vulnerability, but the environment that we grow up in, the experiences that we have, kind of also shape how those genes are expressed. So I think that the sort of interaction between gene and environment is something which we understand as exists. And so the question is, if I have a certain genetic vulnerability, am I destined to manifest it in a pathological way? And the answer is not necessarily, because I do think the environment plays a role. So now we get back to things I was talking about earlier, the foundational aspects of our being in terms of family, society, values, etc., etc. How do those impact and how do those affect gene expression ultimately? And I think when you talk about epigenetics, that's to some extent what one is looking at. I can remember doing a BBC program once because they thought they had discovered a gene for anorexia nervosa. And I said, okay, yeah, that's interesting. I said, I don't believe that's possible. Because in psychiatry, this understanding that you have one gene for a disorder and that there's a straight line, that's pie in the sky, as far as I'm concerned. Psychiatric conditions are multifactorial, they're complex. There are so many interacting factors, which then speak to the fact that there must be multiple genes, and how they interact to produce what you ultimately see is very complex. But coming back to the issue of genetics, and so, okay, we think we've got a gene for anorexia nervosa, and I said, okay, so now what? You're going to screen the population, and you're going to say, well, you've got a gene for anorexia, but I'm not anorexic. So now what? And so one has to be careful that this idea of genetics as the answer to everything leads or doesn't lead to, well, now we need to screen, because if we screen and we identify, then we can prevent. How about we screen, we identify, and we label? And I think you've got to be very, very careful, because, you know, psychiatry as a discipline understands all about stigma. So with the intention of potentially doing something good, you actually end up doing something bad, the law of unintended consequences. So I can remember also writing an article exactly about that, where one has to be cautious in terms of what you do with information and also why you're gathering information. So I'm not saying that, this should stop and we shouldn't be looking into these things. But the point is, you have to understand consequences. And so my concern in that instance, and they didn't disagree with me, where I said, well, okay, what are you going to do with this information? Fine. So you've got a gene, and now what? So, I think there's a lot of expectation, and there's a lot of hype and excitement, and it's genes and genetics. And I think one just has to be a little bit cautious and a little bit wary and think downstream and say, okay, if I do this, what then? And you have to look at the consequences very broadly. And I think, unintended consequences. I can come back to life isidemeni, unintended consequences.
Yeah.
And
I suppose also a lot of this stuff creates an external locus of responsibility, which is not the best idea for people who have to take ownership of their own problems. And more we're seeing people presented with the option of blaming something other than themselves, well, not just blaming, but taking responsibility.
Yes.
So, it's my genes. It's the fact that my parents didn't buy me enough toys or hug me enough when I was a kid. It's the government's fault. It's the economy. It's the leaky roof in my house. It's anything except me taking charge of what I want to do about something. Sure, we all, have problems, and some people have more than others. And even the least sympathetic of us can understand that that's a good starting point. But where do you go from there? You can't just sit and wallow and blame everybody else. That's possibly the worst route for anyone to take if they're dealing with serious or not so serious mental health conditions.
Well, I think you're talking there about locus of control. Where's the locus of control? And this word agency. We all have agency at the end of the day. Yes, you've had a difficult childhood. And I mean, the whole issue of adverse childhood experiences impacting on subsequent emergence of psychopathology. I think that there's no two ways about it. That certainly, and I think this is one of the issues in psychiatry, actually. Child and adolescent psychiatry. And remember, I come from an adolescent psychiatry background. I ran the adolescent unit at Tara for just on a decade. So I've really worked with some of the most severely disturbed and ill adolescents. But I'll tell you one thing with adolescent psychiatry. As soon as you put that adolescent, as disturbed as they were, and I would say this in virtually every single case, into a structured, nurturing, predictable environment, a lot settled. And a lot of what we saw emerging as psychopathology, I always used to say to my staff, what is the context? The context is critical. Where does this child come from? What were they missing? What do they need? Now, at the end of the day, I think that, again, we're coming back to the foundations of good mental health. And the environment was so powerful in terms of how it mediated the emotions and the behaviors. And so this whole issue of locus of control, that we all have agency, that we've all had difficult experiences. The question is, how do we deal with them? And does every bad experience then justify bad behavior or ways of being that are just destructive? People are different. Everybody has a different way of experiencing, and then they have different experiences towards dealing with what they've experienced. Now, does that mean that everybody who's had a difficult experience needs to end up in a caregiving environment? Well, if that was the case, never mind the resources that we have now, we would just never have enough. So ultimately, it comes back to the individual. How do you manage yourself? How do you understand yourself? And who do you turn to actually deal with?
So, one last thing. I mean, this is really so apt for today's discussion, because we started the show talking about this Donald Trump assassination attempt. And the fact that the guy who did this, we don't know a lot about him yet. People are starting to scour the internet to try and find information about this. Crooks is his surname.
Yes, 20 years old.
Yeah, he's 20 years old. You know, a lot of people are making snap judgments about this, which is dangerous. And I want us to be responsible about how we figure out the way to make sense of this, because obviously there are lots and lots of people who have serious problems in their life and they don't end up trying to kill a presidential candidate. But it does seem like there's a certain kind of person, and I mean, a lot of people saying just losers. You know, like there's this loser thing, these people who are disconnected from society. They spend most of their time online gaming. And I'm not saying all gamers are crazy, because I know lots of gamers who are perfectly sane, sensible, rational people who are connected to the real world. But people are starting to make snap judgments. And without like us taking the same tack and trying to come up with the simplest explanation for something which is probably very complex. What makes a person decide to do something so stupid, to essentially figure out that the best thing they can do is to make their impact on history, probably get taken out at the same time? I don't think anyone decides to do this without knowing that there's a hugely likely possibility they'll be taken out themselves. Where do we go with this?
Well, I think you have to look at each individual. And so my standard answer to always, you know, in those situations is, well, I haven't spoken to the person. So it's very difficult for me to understand what exactly motivates them. But I mean, let's bring it back to the South African situation and Hendrik Verwoerd and the Verwoerd assassination. Correct. And Tsafendis was ultimately mentally ill, and he had believed he had a worm inside him. And you know, so I could say to you, well, psychosis could be one driving factor based on my understanding of a specific case. And I suppose that each individual has their own motivation, Gareth. It's hard to say and to be very specific and say, well, if you're this kind of person, this is what you're going to do. Because again, what is the predictive value in any given situation? Because I may, for example, share similar personality traits to an assassin. Now, what does that mean? That I am somebody who is now potentially at risk for becoming an assassin? I don't know. It's complex. There are a lot of variables that interact, that bring you to that point of committing an act like we've seen. So we don't know. I mean, I don't know anything about this 20-year-old who's he's dead now. So at the end of the day, we're never going to find out exactly what was going through his head and what was going through his mind. But, you know, there are so many situations where one has to just be very, very cautious, very careful. And I think it's appropriate. And I would say, I can't comment. I never spoke to him. So,
and what about the role of the media in kind of pushing people who are on the edge, people who may be extremely sensitive to doing irrational and crazy things? What about the media's responsibility in not pushing those people to the point where they'll take very bad decisions and possibly create chaos in the world? It doesn't take a lot to persuade someone who's in that state of mind, does it?
No, but I would be very cautious in terms of how I implicate the media. I mean, I can look at the media and say that's inflammatory, that is disinformation, that is incorrect. But ultimately, it comes back to me as an individual in terms of how I interpret the media. So this whole issue, I can remember when I was working in the eating disorders unit, I used to go to the schools and talk about eating disorders. And eventually I stopped talking about eating disorders and I started talking about media literacy. And in terms of how you interpret media, because of course this whole issue around fashion, models, diet, etc. And so the issue there was, is the media implicated in eating disorders? And my response was always, well, the media does what the media does. And to what extent does the media reflect society versus influence society? And I think that there is a bi-directional relationship there. So I think one has to be careful in saying, they said this, therefore that happened. But why did they say that? Well, because maybe other certain things were happening. So the issue is the media and society. I think one has to look carefully at what the relationship is. Certainly in terms of suicide and the media. We did a podcast on that with the Beyond Madness series. And certainly, you know, how the media reports on suicide, that has been looked at in terms of not wanting to promote copycat suicides. So I suppose in that sense, one can potentially soften the impact through responsible reporting. But the truth of the matter is, here we're talking about an American situation which is politically very charged. It's very partisan, and it's very divided. And I mean, so is this the media? What is it? What is driving this climate? And to what extent does that then influence actions by specific individuals who are vulnerable? But how do you account for that vulnerability, Gareth? I mean, at the end of the day, how do you know what your words are going to do? I can be sitting here today talking to you, and I say something which I think is just kind of run of the mill. But yet there'll be somebody listening who'll say, wow, that is such a powerful sentence. And it has a really profound impact. And it wasn't my intention to impact that individual in that way, but I've got no clue. I mean, people will often come up to me and say, you know, ex-patients, and they will say, you know, you said whatever. And I'm thinking, geez, did I say that? And they said, yes. And that had such a profound impact on me, that sentence. So now you're coming down to a sentence at a particular moment in a person's life, in a particular interaction, and how powerful that is. How am I going to predict what that sentence is, what that word is? And so I think that one has to just be very careful in terms of how one looks at the media. I'm not saying that the media should not be responsible. Of course they should, and they have to think carefully about their words. But I think to draw a straight line between that and the actions of an individual who we don't know who they are really and what they were experiencing, I think one just has to be a little bit cautious, as much as one needs to also be mindful. So it's that balancing act. Oh, we come back to a word that I like to use, balance. It's all about balance.
Yeah, you know what? Basically, let's just be clear on this show. We don't like people who assassinate, and we're not in favor of that. So just in case anybody's wondering, like, this show does not promote assassinations.
No, it's an assassination-free show.
Yeah, there we go. All right, listen, Prof, we're running out of time.
All right.
It's been so good to reconnect with you.
Likewise.
Love talking to you. Always plenty of insights. And Leanne, thank you for getting to the office extra early so you could do the show with us this morning. All right, very good. And that is it from us, everybody. We will see you on Wednesday morning, bright and early, 6 a.m. Don't miss it. We will be back in studio with all the stuff that you want and all the stuff that you need, and hopefully plenty more than that. So thank you very much. Cheers, everyone. Bye.
Cheerio. Ciao.